This is Dr. Wu, your neighborly family medicine physician, again with proof for the skeptics who demand proof before taking any pill I prescribe. Today we prove which form of vitamin D is best, D2 versus D3, and gummies versus tablets versus capsules. Welcome to my vitamin D series of lectures. First, let's start with D2 versus D3. Almost the same structure. Spot the difference. Did you see it? A single extra carbon atom and a double bond. That's all. 27 of its 28 carbons are identical. This means receptors in our body recognize them as almost identical as well. Before we find out which is better, let's review more differences. The biggest is how we make D2 and D3. Fungus makes D2 in sunlight. Animals make D3 in sunlight. Today we still make D2 supplements from fungus, which sounds gross, except this fungus is yeast, which already makes wine and beer. You're already drinking that. But sadly, there's no vitamin D in alcohol. They keep alcohol away from sunlight because it oxidizes and ruins beer. To make D2, you get a silo of yeast that's naturally and happily making their own ergosterol, expose it to the sun, and congrats, your ergosterol turns into D2. As for D3, yes, we make our own D3 if we bake ourselves in the sun, but for those who supplement, we make this D3 from sheep. Relax, it's not lethal. We just use their wool to get their natural lanolin secretions. Lanolin is a wool grease secreted by the sheep's skin glands to shield their wool and skin from rainwater, and also act as an antimicrobial, very popular in wool socks. We extract the lanolin from wool by centrifuge, expose that pure lanolin to the sun, and we get our D3. Being animals, our human bodies expect D3, but D2 is so structurally similar that it also works. The question now, of course, is which works better? By the way, we measure vitamin D levels at 25 OHD. This is what you'll see in your lab report when I order vitamin D levels for you. In the early 2000s, tests show vitamin D3 as superior to D2. This is one of those studies, and I always show you my favorites of the bunch. In this study, 30 men randomly got a single dose of 50,000 units of vitamin D2 or D3. They started at the same level, but at the end of only 1 week, their vitamin D levels increased significantly more by taking D3 than D2. After 2 weeks, levels remained elevated from D3, but not from D2, which in fact already drifted back down. They estimated that D3 was almost 3 to 10 times more potent than D2, sustaining its boost for much longer than D2. But only 30 men? Yeah, that's a small sample size. In fact, all D2 versus D3 studies are small. Now, recent research suggests that they're actually not so different. Michael Hollick, endocrinologist and director of research at Boston University, is a big name in vitamin D research. Here we have his best study. 68 randomized patients took 1,000 units daily of D2, D3, a combo, or a placebo for over 11 weeks. They found all the supplements raised levels higher than placebo by week 3, and that all 3 supplements boosted to the same level. See how D2, D3, and the D2, D3 combo trended in about the same range? Prior to 3 weeks, D3 appears to raise levels faster than D2. Hollick discusses this in his research, but the D2 group started lower, so this skews results. Still, overall, this study is mostly good for its long-term effects, which were equal. But at 68 randomized patients, it's still small, so this is nowhere near settled. Still waiting for bigger and better studies. Now, raising vitamin D to the right level is great, but do D2 and D3 do the same thing? The answer comes from rickets. Both D2 and D3 cure rickets, so they both seem to work. What's rickets? A disease that plagued Americans living under a weak North American winter sun too far from the equator. Kids were born with severely low vitamin D and grew up with weak, curved, deformed bones, as you can see in the crooked thigh bone below. In the 1900s, they didn't know what vitamin D was, but already knew that butterfat, sunlight, UV irradiated liver, heated cod liver oil, and even sun-exposed sawdust cure rickets. Wait, sawdust? You're gonna make a poor kid eat sawdust? Well, they didn't know at the time, but it wasn't the sawdust, but the fungus growing in the sawdust that provided the vitamin D2. Chemist Adolf Windaus identified this vitamin D2 and used it alone to cure rickets in 1931. Results were dramatic. Bow-legged kids straightened up and started to walk as they grew up. Windaus won the Nobel Prize. Great, so D2 works. How about D3? Shortly after the D2 miracle, they also found that D3 worked. They identified D3 was the magic inside the butterfat and irradiated liver. It worked so well that the US implemented vitamin D3 fortified milk since the 1930s. That one decision to put vitamin D3 in milk eradicated rickets entirely from the US. That's how well it works. So, which is better? Actually, here again, about the same. This study shows D2 as equivalent to D3 in bone activity. They determined bone building activity by measuring osteoblast activity, since osteoblasts are the bone building cells in bone. They measured osteoblast activity by measuring their osteocalcin DNA level. The more osteocalcin DNA, the more active the osteoblast, so the higher the better. They stimulated the osteoblasts with active forms of vitamin D2 or D3 at various doses and concentration. They compared this activity against osteoblasts that got no stimulation. To test the osteoblasts without interference from the human body, they did it in vitro, in a flask containing just the osteoblasts and then adding the stimulant to that flask. The chart below shows the results, with bone activity on the horizontal axis represented by the amount of osteocalcin DNA. The vertical axis shows different concentrations of the stimulant, along with which hour they recheck bone activity. The blue bar is D2, the pink below it is D3. Not much activity before 24 hours, which matched the unstimulated control group. Not much activity from low concentration stimulants either, but at the right concentration after 24 hours, activity shot up sharply, as you can see in the middle 4 bars. Notice that at any time and concentration, the D2 and D3 coupled bars were about the same everywhere. This suggests that the bone-building osteoblasts consider D2 and D3 as identical. Like many studies, this wasn't perfect. They couldn't use the actual D2 itself, but a close analog to D2 with an extra oxygen atom. Being even more different from D3, we would have expected a bigger difference in response to stimulation. Instead, they stimulated equally, despite being more structurally different. Thus, we can extrapolate that the real D2 would be even more equal to D3. So results were good. From this experiment, we would expect bone strength gains to be equal for either D2 or D3 at any same dose and time. So you can take either D2 or D3. Both are about the same. However, it's still a hot topic. If you trust smaller, earlier studies, you might go for D3 since the effect may be faster and last longer. Also, D3 is what we naturally would make for ourselves in the sun. If you trust the larger, more recent studies, both are equally good. Also, based on how they're manufactured, vegetarians might prefer D2, but harvesting D3 doesn't kill sheep either. I lean more to the latest and greatest, so I view D2 and D3 the same for now. Now on to the gummies versus tablets versus capsules. Manufacturers are able to stuff more different types of vitamins and nutrients into tablets, so they're generally the best multivitamin, because they have a bit of everything. However, most Americans don't need all that. They only need vitamin D. Unless you're pregnant, then you need more. So what's the best form of just the vitamin D that you need? First up, capsules versus tablets. One good study says they're similar. 55 people in Norway tried capsules and tablets and rechecked their vitamin D level after 4 weeks of daily supplement. Both capsules and tablets were 400 units, a reasonable amount. They usually come in 400 or 1000s at your local pharmacy. The chart below shows that the tablets group started slightly lower, but as you can see, both increased the same amount. So capsules are equal to tablets in raising your vitamin D level. How about gummies? Gummies beat tablets by a lot, most likely due to better bioavailability, meaning your body absorbs and uses more of it. 31 people each randomly got a gummy or tablet, had their blood checked, took no supplement for 2 weeks, then took the other and had their blood rechecked. So the same person got to eventually experience both gummies and tablets, with that 2-week gap in between to let it wear off. In the chart below, at peak level, which occurred around 10 hours after taking the supplement, vitamin D levels rose to 47 on the gummy but only 23 on the tablet. This suggests gummies are 2 times better at delivering its vitamin D into your body. Plus they taste better anyway, although that wasn't part of the study. Gummies win by a lot, much better than tablets and capsules. To summarize, D2 and D3 are both fine, both raise levels, both strengthen bone. D3 is your natural form, but D2 does just as well. Of course, research is ongoing. On the other hand, pretty conclusively, gummies did better than tablets and capsules. In conclusion, please eat your gummy D2 or D3 when I prescribe it. You can, of course, also eat vitamin D fortified food or bake yourself in the summer sun to get that sweet, sweet vitamin D that you need, but that's a discussion for another time. To find more research-backed answers, and if you even need a supplement, and how much of it, check out my other videos from the vitamin D series. Truth is behind the research and I bring you the best. Leave a comment if you found anything better. Like and subscribe if this helped and you want to see more. Thanks.